When you start playing Escape from Tarkov, there are a few things to keep in mind that will help you become a better player in the long run. In today's video, we'll discuss the benefits of not biting off more than you can chew by learning 3 maps and sticking to them. I'm Gaz, welcome back to the channel. After loading the game up for the first time, you've probably played all of the maps to see how they feel to you. That's great. The map design is spectacular in this game and it's something BSG really deserve credit for. But splitting your time between all 7 maps is only going to stunt your growth as a player. Let's dive into why. But first, I'd like to hear what your favourite map is in Escape from Tarkov and why. Let me know in the comments below. I'm interested in seeing which maps are the most popular in my community. Escape from Tarkov's maps vary wildly. Some maps are completely indoors with small rooms, corridors and tight corners. Some are completely outdoors with plenty of foliage, wide open spaces and long sight lines. And some are a mix of the two. Attempting to learn all 7 maps means taking on each of these playstyles and trying to master them all, which just isn't feasible for a new player. On top of this, if you're jumping from customs to reserve to factory then to shoreline, you're never going to get a grasp on player, item and scav spawns, as well as extracts for each location. This will ultimately lead to many deaths when you don't know where you were killed from, didn't know where you needed to extract, and didn't really have that much loot on you anyway. The solution to this is simple. Slow it right down and make a conscious decision to learn one map until you're extremely comfortable with it. Then, when you feel like you're in a rhythm with this map, do the same for 2 more. Simply put, you're going to have a much better time in your Escape from Tarkov journey if you know everything there is to know about just a few of the maps. Now, I could hardly give you this advice without giving my opinion on which you should be starting with. You might find my choices to be pretty standard, but that's probably a good thing as it means you already have an idea for these maps, making learning them even more straightforward. The very first map I recommend you learn in Escape from Tarkov is Customs. Customs, before the expansion, and arguably after, is one of the most linear maps in Escape from Tarkov. Generally speaking, when you load this map up as a PMC, you'll be attempting to make it from left to right or right to left. This opens the door for some PvP engagements if you're trying to get comfortable with that, as there are 3 main lanes of action in this map. These are through or behind dorms. This is the lane where the highest volume of PMCs will be in the early game, as dorms is still considered to be the #1 location for both loot and PvP on Customs. Then we have the middle lane, down the main road and through or around New Gas. This lane is much less traffic than dorms, but is very much out in the open with little cover if you find yourself in an engagement. I'd recommend avoiding this lane where possible and moving fast if you absolutely must use it. The final lane takes you through the expansion. There's a lot of room to manoeuvre here with plenty of concealment and cover in case you are fired upon. Just be aware that the customs scav boss, Rashala, and his followers can spawn in the fortress building, which has overlook on the whole area. One of the main reasons the lanes in Customs are so important is that, unlike other maps, they are almost entirely separate from each other. This means you only have to worry about engagements in your lane rather than having third parties get involved as soon as you take the first shot. Customs is also overlooked when it comes to looting. The first video on this channel is a complete Customs money run guide, which complements this video on learning maps very well. For whatever reason, barrel caches and wooden caches, as well as a huge portion of the rooms and buildings in Customs, are rarely looted. This might be the remnants of a bygone era where Customs didn't have much loot outside of the dorms buildings, but either way, the locations are easy to learn and will net you a lot of money if you hit the safe ones on your way across the map. There is just enough to do and learn in Customs to last you a solid couple of weeks or more. Learn as many of the potential loot spawns as you can, learn where AI scavs tend to patrol, and make a mental note of player locations throughout the raid. Enough about Customs, the second map I'd recommend is Shoreline. But first, if you've made it this far, you're obviously enjoying or finding this content helpful. I make videos like this multiple times a week, so hit subscribe and stay up to date on all of the videos I create. Leave a like too while you're here, your support is much appreciated. Shoreline, like Customs, has one central location that you're likely to find players running for, the health resort. Avoid this place like the plague, especially if you're not equipped to fight squads. There are a lot of top tier loot spawns here, including items like the blue and red keycards, lead X's and graphics cards. Not to mention Sanitar, the Shoreline scav boss. Gear players come here to make money, and if you're learning the map, it's not a great idea to get mixed up in this. Instead, it's quite easy to work your way around the edges, looting places like the village, pier and radar station. This map is similar to Customs in that you'll have to work your way from one side to the other in order to extract, but I find it to be much easier to avoid engaging other players here entirely, as there are no lanes. The only thing to be aware of is people sniping down from the health resort, and the hydro power station, which effectively cuts the map in half. This means there are a couple of small choke points, on the road to the south, by the power station itself, at the resort, and behind it near the rock passage. Once again, if you play carefully and move quickly, these choke points are rarely watched aside from resort and the old scav at power station and gas station to the south. Once you're more comfortable with PvP and the map itself, if you do decide to venture into resort, these can be some of the most rewarding and enjoyable moments in Tarkov. Just don't rush to do this too quickly. Take your time and make smart decisions. The layout of Shoreline is very easy to learn, which makes it a no-brainer as a second map to recommend for newer players. And finally, the third map was a toss-up, but I chose Interchange over Reserve for a few reasons. Firstly, the extracts are much easier to get to and don't require other factors to unlock. With the exception of Kiba, the extracts in this map are spaced out nicely. For 3,000 rubles you can get out at the car at power station. Alternatively, you've got the Emacom checkpoint and the railway exfil as your primary exits. All three of these extracts require minimal effort to escape through and are far enough away from the main shopping centre that you should have a pretty nice time getting to them without finding yourself in the firing line. They are in 3 different corners of the map too, meaning no matter where you exit the main complex, you're never too far away. My second reason for recommending Interchange is that the flow of the map is much easier to comprehend. You can learn it bit by bit. By this, I mean that your first Interchange raid could simply consist of spawning at power station, looting a little bit, then working your way around the very edge of the map to the Emacom checkpoint, looting along the way, then extracting after 10 minutes. In your next raid, you could build onto that by adding the underground garage to your repertoire. Then, add Idea, Ollie and Goshen, the 3 big stores around the edge. And finally, venture into some of the smaller shops inside the complex itself. There's plenty to build on in Interchange when you take it little by little. Another reason for Interchange, though not necessarily in direct competition with Reserve, is the amount of loot on offer here. If you can learn Interchange well, you figure out where the best items spawn, you understand where players might congregate, and importantly, you know where the scav boss killer spawns, then you'll know almost the exact route you should be taking through, to make this possibly one of the best money-making maps in Escape from Tarkov. As you might expect from a shopping centre, the shelves are chock full of barter items and valuables. Put this one high on your list for pure PMC money runs, after you've conquered the basics by learning the previous 2 maps. My final reason for this recommendation is that players going into Reserve are generally geared to engage raiders, meaning a difficult battle should you run into one. While this is still likely to be an issue for you at Interchange, as players look to engage killer, you're far less likely to run into well-geared opposition if you stay away from killer spawns and the super high value loot spawns. There is enough loot around the outskirts of Interchange while you're learning to net you some serious profit, so think twice before running straight to Kiba, Techlight or Mantis. Finally, a little extra tip for you here, which should go without saying, make sure you don't leave the raid before the 10-minute mark, or you've gained less than 600 XP. This will constitute a run-through and won't allow you to sell the items you've collected on the flea market. Speaking of which, my flea market introduction video is up next. Keep an eye out for that one. You know what to do if you found this video helpful. Hit all of the buttons. Go make some cheddar, fellas. I'll see you next time.